Hello, my name is Andrew, you can call me Cookies, and here's my coverage of healing the last two bosses within the Eternal Palace on normal and heroic difficulty. As the penultimate boss in the Eternal Palace, we have Zakul, and the first major mechanic we will be going over is Dread. This is an ability that the boss will cast in specific moments during the fight, fearing 3 random DPS players. This fear can be dispelled and does a burst of raid-wide damage when it is. The best way to deal with this mechanic is to use healer cooldowns like Spirit Link, Barrier, and Aura Mastery, as well as personal cooldowns on the raid just before or as you dispel all 3 of these debuffs at once with things like Tremor Totem or Mass Dispel. The next mechanic to cover is Crushing Doubt, which spawns a large portal on one side of the room, and after a short delay, it'll spawn a tentacle that goes across the middle of the room to the other side, knocking any players in its path back and potentially out of the encounter space. Best way of dealing with this mechanic is to just avoid being in the center of the room, and only move if you see that the tentacle is on the direct opposite side of you. Lastly, in Phase 3, when the boss is below 50% HP, you will need to make use of the Fear Realm in order to kill ads. You can do this by walking near the spawned Horrific Summoner ads and clicking on your extra action button. And you should stay down in this realm until the 3 summoner ads are dead, and then quickly make your way to the purple portal near Thalyssra to return to the normal realm. Typically on Heroic, you will need to enter the Fear Realm and deal with these ads once or twice before you are able to ignore the ads and just burn the boss. So that covers all the major mechanics of this fight and how to best deal with the heavy raid-wide damage that occurs from the Dread cast. So with Zakul down, let's move on to the last boss of the instance. Alright, so the last boss we will be covering in this video series is none other than Queen Azshara. This fight has lots going on, so I'll do my best to stick to the important bits that you will be wanting to have a heads up on going into this fight, specifically as a healer. Firstly, in Phase 1, there is near nothing but tank damage happening, so you should be utilizing your damage abilities to help push the phase a little bit faster. Only doing a small amount of raid healing as the phase is coming to an end when the arcane orbs spawn in the center of the room. These spawn a few times throughout the encounter and will usually overlap with the decree mechanic, which will be a good time to use some shorter healing CDs like Healing Tide, Aura Mastery, and Wings. During Phase 2 is when our job as a healer becomes a little more important. First off, be sure to stand on the runes on the floor when they begin to lose energy and you have less than 5 of the Soul Drain debuff stacks. And also during this phase, Azshara will be debuffing 2 or more players with Arcane Burst. These 2 players will need to be out of line of sight of both the raid and Azshara and then be dispelled. So you'll have to be sure that you follow players who cannot dispel themselves and dispel them once they are LOS from the raid and also Azshara. Going into Phase 3, we have 1 new mechanic on top of the Phase 2 mechanics to watch out for. When the phase begins, some new ads will be spawned, and among them will be a Loyal Myrmidon. This ad will cast charged spears at random players, which deal a bit of raid-wide damage if done correctly, and a lot of raid-wide damage if done incorrectly. So be ready to use a healing CD or 2 in order to just play it safe and keep the raid topped off going into the 4th and final phase. In this phase, Azshara will be spawning void zones that deal lots of damage to players within them, as well as beams that cut diagonally into the center of the room. So be sure to avoid these and be ready to put all of your efforts into healing through the overcharge mechanic. When Azshara casts this ability, players within the raid will need to interact with the console device at the bottom of the encounter space. When they do, they remove 1 charge from the console and deal a moderate burst of damage to the raid. So be sure to be staggering the interactions on the console with 2 to 3 players while using healing cooldowns to keep the raid alive through each burst of damage. If you can manage that, you got yourself an Azshara kill. So that covers all of Heroic Eternal Palace. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. If you are interested in content focused around all things healing in World of Warcraft, be sure to subscribe to the channel and follow me over on Twitch, which is linked in the description. I stream pretty much about every single day starting at 8:15 Pacific time. So have a great rest of your day and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.